and you're live.
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us as we really herald and welcome the International Women's Day for 2023. And we are all focused in this panel today, this really mighty panel, on the actions, the assets, the practical things that our great panelists suggest that will enhance the role of women in and with innovation and technology. And so we've got some amazing individuals, and I'm going to start by doing a sort of an alphabetical introduction. I'm going to start with Deepali. Deepali is currently responsible for all of the marketing, brand initiatives, and customer management relationship at IBM in India and South Asia. She's worked in many sectors, financial services, in travel, and she is based and calling in from Mumbai. She teaches and mentors MBA students and has won numerous awards, including the Impact List of the 50 most influential women in India. So welcome, Deepali.
Thank you, Harriet. Thank you for having me here.
Fantastic. And then we have the incredible Emma Wright. Emma is currently at Harbottle and Lewis. She leads the firm's new technology, data and digital group. And the practice covers regulatory and commercial telecom and technology matters. Emma is recognized as one of the top 20 most influential women in tech by the UK Computer Weekly. She's a director of the Interparliamentary Forum of Emerging Technology and sits as a non-exec director at Playfinder. We are thrilled to have you with us, Emma.
Thank you. Thrilled to be asked to join this tremendous panel.
Thank you. And then we have the sensational Sharena. A year ago, I was her guest as we hosted International Women's Day at Cambridge. Sharena is ex-Microsoft and NatWest Group, and she is a startup Zarina in terms of doing her master's in entrepreneurship from Cambridge. She has campaigned for gender equality in the workplace, and her achievements and her work have been recognized by Deborah Meaden, Jamal Edwards, MB, and even the Duke of York. So she was named recently as one of the UK's top brightest young leaders by Henley Business School. So we've got some rich diversity with us here. And with perfect timing, I can also, and I'm thrilled to introduce the incredible Ruth Owen. Ruth, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Harriet. Sorry I'm a bit late.
No, that was perfect. I just finished introducing Sharena and magically you arrived. So Ruth is the CEO of Leonard Cheshire. She's a passionate advocate of disabled people's rights and has been widely acknowledged for her delivery of innovation in the disability sector. In 2019, she was selected as a member of the Mayor of London's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Group. And she's also a trustee for the Social Mobility Foundation. She's a chair of the Greater London Regional Stakeholder Network, appointed by the Office for Disability Issues. So we really do have an amazing array, the great and the good. And our purpose, I think, in this panel, I promise you I'm going to stop talking soon, is really to provide actionable, practical advice, and of course, with this panel, lashings of inspiration for those of you joining us. What I'm going to do is sort of start by asking a question of each of you. I'm informed that the most successful panels are where there is interactivity. So please feel free to add, to interact. but I'm going to kick it off in alphabetical order, sort of again, with Deepali. And really ask you, Deepali, I mean, you've worked in some mighty organizations and who themselves use a great deal of technology, both sell it, use it internally. And I wanted to get your advice and your experiences of how you really can enhance, women's development, their use of technology. What are some of the things that you've seen that practically work inside the organizations that you've worked for?
Thank you, Harriet, for asking that very important question. I think we talk about the use of technology at three levels. One is, I think we're able to do this panel and globally connect women, who have common interests, thanks to what technology has done for us. I think the second that has happened, and especially during COVID, it has got accelerated, is emphasis on, working from home, which in a way, the hybrid working has brought to the world's notice, and especially in India, of what home situations are and how technology can be very securely and practically used to ensure that organizations are productive and, all the workers, men and women, have great, balance of work from home, work from office, hybrid productivity, innovation, collaboration, etc. But to me, the third level is very important. And that is, I think that women around the world will become more productive if each one of us is more productive. And I have noticed my own life in the last 15 years, thanks to the technology advancements, have made me more efficient and yet present, both at work and, for my family. So be it the ubiquitous smartphone, be it the usage of WhatsApp, be it the shopping online, be it digital payments, be it, the calendars that I use. And there are two tips I want to share. One is, for example, I just have the same calendar for home and for office. So the most important things for my home are transparently shared, with colleagues, assistants at work. And similarly, the most important things at office are also, shared with the family for them to know that, there is balance. That's one tip I want to share. The second thing is that both my personal and office, all papers, all folders, all files now travel with me. My son, who's actually now 18, 2 years ago, helped me go completely, without paper. I now take notes on my iPad. I have 4 years, 5 years old notes with me. I use speech to text. I have notebooks, which are filled on my iPad. But yes, the tip for women is invest in the new technology products because it makes you more efficient. And if each one of us becomes efficient, the whole world, the women across the world will become efficient. So I think these are the differences that I have seen the technology has, brought into our lives.
Fantastic, Deepali. And you're always so practical. That's what I love about the advice you give. I'm going to ask if anyone has a tip, a technology, an answer to that beyond Deepali before I go on and ask Emma our next question. So anyone want to add anything to Deepali's tips and advice?
I just wanted to echo that. I completely agree. I use my calendar at both. So whether it's work or personal, it's all in the same place. And also as someone who's always busy on the go, I now voice note a lot of my messages to get a clearer message across with empathy, as opposed to, say, an email, which can sometimes seem a little bit short, too rushed, and you still get the same point across, but it just gives it that kind of personalization. So yeah, voice notes on whether that's LinkedIn, you can even do it on WhatsApp or just all channels. It's my new hack for the last 2 years, and I'm not turning away from that at all.
I agree with you both. I'd also add that from my perspective, it's very important for me to role model that if there's a significant event in my children's lives, I want it in my diary, and I want to show people that I am going to this event and that it's okay for them to do it. It's not private. This is part of our lives and our, it's us. And we shouldn't have to apologize for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Ruth, did you have anything to add there?
No, I'm a big fan of voice messaging, Harriet. I love it. I do much more than writing, as you know, much more than writing on text and everything. I think it's got much more of a softer approach to things.
Whenever I get a voicemail from you, whatever time, wherever it is, you always lift my day. You get so much emotion across in those little voice messages. Well, I'm going to pop to Emma next because, you've done a lot of research and work in the field, and it's already popping up as, interest from people. What do you think are some of the emerging technologies or trends that you think hold promise, Emma, for combating some of the challenges around gender, in the tech industry? Some would say discrimination, unconscious bias, whether that's, do you see these emerging from an AI? I've written and posted about this, but we'd love to get your views about some of the technologies and trends that can really help women in the workplace.
So I think that AI has tremendous opportunity. I think that, that if you look at kind of some of the uses of ChatGPT and on the prompts where we're being served how to respond to an email, whether that's the right comms or not for it to respond is a different matter. But, you're now getting text presented with a prompt as to how you, thanks very much, or those kinds of things. If you think back a couple of years ago, they weren't an option. You were having to reply back furiously on a train to acknowledge all of your messages. So I think there is so much scope for the metaverse as well, for us to be able to build those connections in a digital world. I think the risk we are faced with is to some extent our lack of awareness. We work in technology, but if we look at kind of across the world, some people won't realize that actually they're interacting with AI. Yeah. That if the AI tools have got bias within them, then people won't understand where it's coming from. And I think there's also an issue, and I need to research whether it's higher amongst women than men around this deference to technology, that the computer gives us an output, and so therefore that computer must be right.
Yeah.
And so if we're faced with that lack of awareness that it's a tool that we've trained telling us, a certain output, together with we wouldn't want to question it, we may find that we're defined by our past and not our future in how these tools are trained. And I think that's the big bit. But actually, what it can do, which is streamline our lives and provide us with very helpful connections and quick prompts, etc. It will be tremendously time saving.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts on emerging technologies that you think can really help people in the workplace or help fight some of the bias or discrimination that exists, or not even in the workplace, in life generally? This theme that we all have to acquire the skills the world needs, and many of those are tech. But any emerging technologies that are kind of worthy of sharing here for people who are thinking about how do I go learn and leapfrog?
So, Harriet, I think India has always provided an opportunity for the world, to see technology at scale. We just millions and billions of people, So I think I want to talk about a friend of mine. His name is Anand Bajaj, and he's found a company called Pay Nearby. This is, taking care of the digital payments ecosystem in India. And many of you will realize that rural India does not have the kind of access to banking and financial products that urban India has. And, although we are linked with, digital signatures and so on and so forth, but women actually are far behind, even in terms of access to banking technology. Now, their product is only mobile phone based, and they've actually enabled women to become like a retail store through their mobile phones. So women have become almost like banking correspondents. They
Yeah.
help other women and men withdraw cash, do insurance, and they're enabling thousands of women. So, if I just look at examples such as these,
Yeah.
of what technology has enabled in bridging the gender gap, or enabling women, I think that I find extremely inspiring.
Absolutely.
A part of the world to come.
Absolutely. And Ruth, I mean, I know that you as a CEO of organizations like WizKids and Leonard Cheshire, you've used technology to really transform those really important organizations. From your perspective, when you think about technology and digital tools that promote greater inclusion and equity for women with disabilities in the workplace, what is your your sense of advice, inspiration, or things you would select to share today with those listening?
Well, Harriet, you know what? Technology's changed my life. I'm a full-time wheelchair user, as you know. I can't live without my iPhone. I mean, I know people joke and say, oh, you spend too much time on it, but it's changed my life in terms of accessibility. It's changed my life in terms of, just the smallest of things for disabled people to get to work. I mean, I can go on Street View. I can see whether there's steps. I can see whether there's a dropped curb. I can look on a number of apps if I want to travel and look at hotels in terms of accessibility or airlines or transportation. And I think, even I live in London and I use City Mapper to look at how I'm going to get from A to B from an accessible route. Now, if I didn't have my phone, I couldn't do that. So the world was much smaller. I think what technology's done for disabled people and the accessibility, it's opened up the world, and it allows you to think about employment and being and inclusive. So I'm a big advocate of technology. I think that, I just can't imagine life without technology, if I'm honest with you. And I think what excites me most is how we can really transform disabled people's lives with even greater technology that allows us to actually enable people to lead the lives that they want to lead, and just opens up the world even further and allows them to have more control and choice about their lives. So, I'm a big tech lover. So and I just think, from my point of view and from the people that we support, and I think about my journey over the last 20 years, I don't know how I lived without technology, if I'm honest with you, Harriet. I used to stress about, could I get in that building and who was I going to ask to get me up steps? I don't have to do that so much now. No, we're not completely there yet.
No.
So I like anybody on this call to think that we were completely there yet. But I think for women, I think it's really transformed disabled people's lives. So
And we discussed this a number of times during COVID when we were all in lockdown.
Yeah.
And you shared something with me that stuck with me so much, because we were all doing this, and others who were full-time wheelchair users on a Zoom, there was no difference.
No difference.
And the issue of that creating wrongly a barrier or a comment or whatever, and long may that, we're all different, but the access to technology, the tools, the apps that you use, let alone the pretty sophisticated technology in wheelchairs that we're beginning to see, there are positives within that, right?
Definitely. And I think some of the stuff, if I think about what struck me when I visited one of our services and how we've integrated Alexa into a wheelchair, into a speech recognition, and into how Alexa can enable the young person to actually, say, call my mum, call my dad, get me there. I mean, it's just incredible. So I think, I think hybrid working has really had benefits, and I think it'd be good to see even greater changes for disabled people's lives across the planet.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. And does anyone else? I mean, I know that Ruth is alone in being a full-time wheelchair user, but there are many challenges within the workplace. Do any of you have examples of how technology has really enhanced the role of women, providing accessibility or confidence or skills? Anything that you would put out there that follows on a little from the Ruth theme? No problem. We have loads of questions. So if one pops up.
I want to add, it may seem a little trivial, I think, given the severity that Ruth spoke about, but I think a working mother's life is easier. I have an 18-year-old niece, and just the play school, how they have put an app out for the parents to be able to watch the classroom, or the security cameras at home and the sophistication that you have. And, just that level of, presence of a mother, to her child has increased. I mean, I gave a mobile phone to my son when he was 8 years old, not because, he wanted it, but because, I felt that he could get in touch with me whenever he wanted. I think, so I'm not saying a working woman, but a working mother's life has definitely been made easier.
Yeah. Now, Sharena, you're here for many great reasons, but you represent the sort of entrepreneurial, younger, new age view of how the world is going. And you interview a lot of entrepreneurs. I listened to your Alison Rose interview in terms of, the first woman to lead a major UK bank. But when you think about technology in entrepreneurship, share some of what you think those listening out there need to think about, need to do, need to get reskilled in.
Definitely. So I actually started my first job at an estate agency when I was 17. I then worked at Microsoft, and they really promoted agile working, wherever you felt comfortable, which is a given nowadays. I then went to the bank and was told we had to be present, we had to turn up every single day. And then I started my own business. I think technology has played a big part in my life because I've never decided to get an office for my property management business. I've always done everything by going to the property, visiting the tenants and the landlords, and coming back and being able to work on a computer and not having to pay for that kind of extra space to operate out of. It's also allowed me with technology to actually go and study a master's at Cambridge, relocate myself, and as Deepali said, having all the folders there, having the contacts and the contractors in place to be able to have those conversations. And now when a tenant has a fault, instead of traveling to go and view the fault, then having to get the right contractor in place, they can send you a quick message or a photo of it on WhatsApp, and you can remedy it a lot quicker, less time, and it's better for them because they've found a direct solution quicker. So that's kind of the property side, how the technology has enabled me to start a business and been beneficial for my customers. But from a podcasting side, so this was something when I was working at the bank, and before I left to start my business, my housemate said, listen to these American podcasts. So I went home, and as I started on my projects, I was very much listening to stories about other entrepreneurs. But one thing I felt that we lacked here in the UK was that kind of the stories from UK entrepreneurs that Sharena at 22 would have really appreciated. So I started the podcast at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's called Startup Start now. And I interview British entrepreneurs because I'm really nosy and I want to find out how they went about creating really successful businesses, but also I want to reach wider audiences. So it's listened to in 120 countries. And I question that even if I had created any incredible speaking position or conference, I wouldn't reach that amount of countries. I now, from the clever technology, can see what my listeners' ages are, their genders, what technology they're listening to, devices that they're using, what parts of the podcast is most interesting and when they drop off. And again, as a creator, that really helps me tune what I do to get the right information to my listeners. They all love Beyonce and Ed Sheeran. Like, that's good to know, because then when I'm creating content online, I can embody those songs. So I really feel that podcasting, and again, if we talk about sort of new ways to reach people, podcasting is the future, because it gets your voices out there as a female, and it allows you to have those conversations that sadly have existed, but in white male rooms for private members. These are these hush-hush stories about how we started our businesses. And as somebody who is really wanting to create something successful, I now have this accessibility to listen to how male and females and all genders are creating successful businesses here in the UK.
Fantastic, Sharena. And as you've been speaking, we've had some questions come in. So I'm gonna do a couple of rapid fire of each, one question and ask you all to answer it. The first and most prevalent one is, how do we encourage more women to join IT or the tech sector? Obviously, we know the dropout numbers, but why don't you start, Emma, about how do you go about hiring the great and the good to join, your team, and what you think we can be doing that's different and better to encourage more women to either join the IT department in your company or, in your case, your practice?
So I think the tech sector has an issue, right? We don't see the numbers and the diversity of candidates that we need to see, and there is a piece around that, around young, particularly in the UK, young girls in STEM and being given the confidence at teenager to go forward in that. But equally, I think then, from my perspective, we are often, our group is kind of majority female. We are often the only females in the room. And I think it's empowering the team so that all views are respected, every opinion is valued, and that actually it's building that environment where in other industries, typically it's been probably a bit more conservative. In the tech sector, it's amazing because it's very relaxed. It has a very different feel to it. It's just unfortunate that it doesn't have the diversity that we really need to get these products that are being developed. And so with our team, it's very much giving people the letting people feel that they are able to bring everything to work in that sense. Yes. And that there are no stereotypes or normals, and geek is good in that sense.
Yeah, I always felt very, very strongly that if you can see it, you have a chance of being it. And having more of us in different forms out there doing it. But Deepali, on the same question, how do we encourage more women into tech or into IT?
I think there are two ends. One is, I totally agree with Emma and you in saying more role models. I think one is the pipeline increase at the college level, where more and more girls opt for STEM, not just at higher education, but right from grade 8, and, creating interest and working with the parents, also to say, so that's a societal, change that we need to kind of bring about. I mean, half the workforce in the world, we need to do STEM. Technology is the way forward, for the next decade. The second is pipeline, which once they have, joined the workforce, a lot of them go off the ramp, at a 6-year mark or a 8-year mark or a 10-year mark. And I think that's where a lot of the programs that organizations do need to be about active mentorship, active sponsorship, of, female candidates. Now, I think that's one area where we must look at strong male sponsorship and male mentors for women. As it is very few of us, so we can't mentor everyone. And I think technology companies should definitely look at matching, women with potential, all women to, lots of male mentors and sponsors.
Fabulous. Thank you, Deepali. Ruth, what's your sense on this one in terms of encouraging more women into these spaces?
I think it's slightly changing the kind of way they recruit, if I'm honest. I think it's, when you look at, I think a lot of females, and particularly maybe disabled females, wouldn't think that the tech world was for them. And I think, they look at, they look at those brands. And I mean, I've had young people say it to me, and even, in my role at Leonard Cheshire, well, I'm not sure that's an organization I would apply for. I think it's being more diverse in its advertising and its recruitment. I think, to your point, and the rest of the ladies, is more like us. So people actually see, because actually technology, working in a technology could be, agile working, kind of flexible working. It's a very good environment to work in. I just think it just needs to change a little bit to how it targets the younger female that they're looking to employ, I think. And particularly for disabled people, I think, technology, you don't have to go to an office now. You can do a lot of it from home. So I personally think it's a little bit of how they market themselves and how inclusive they really, really want to be.
Yeah, the amount of personal deselection.
Yeah, exactly.
Saying this does not mean me. They don't look like me. I don't understand the words. I don't know what the job is. And I think reframing that is so important. And Sharena, from your perspective, how do we do it? How do we get more women into IT or into tech?
I definitely think there's probably people listening to today that is slightly intrigued about it, but don't know how to start or where to go for it. And actually, I think they're only going to know that when they start doing it. So there's courses that they can take. I mean, and as well, we think, it's got to happen from when you've, started school and you follow on that way. But actually, if you're in a career that you're really disliking at the moment, what's stopping you from doing night classes and learning about coding? And I think just going on and spending some money on a short course, or even there's free ones, and giving it a try and then dismiss it and say, it didn't work for me. But I think if there is some intrigue in and again, this STEM is such a whole variety, isn't it? So I think it's just about giving it a chance. If it doesn't work, that's fine. At least you've explored the option. But I definitely agree with sort of the role modeling part that Emma talked about, and yourself, Harriet, that we do need to see a lot more. And I interviewed Edwina Dunn. She was the founder of the Tesco Club Card and, a really amazing data scientist. And she basically is doing that. She's role modeling. So if people haven't heard of the female lead, go and have a look at all these amazing, phenomenal STEM women that are creating change. And, I think that's kind of a good starting place of finding those incredible role models and then being able to just give it a try if you're interested in it. I mean, I didn't know how to edit videos. I didn't know how to sort all the technology from a podcasting, but YouTube is a great resource. I went on there, I did a few free sort of videos, and you go down this rabbit hole and you learn all these tips and tricks. And it's not till you're doing it always seems like it's really difficult until you get started. And then you do it and you go, oh gosh, that wasn't as difficult as it was. So stop putting it off. And just, if you take anything away from today, it's just read more on it and go onto YouTube.
The coding point is a great one. I took an entire management team to learn to code just for a day. Obviously, only a couple of us had coded before, but about a way of thinking, how coders think and how your brain operates. It's actually a tremendous team building exercise. And the people who, it's most surprising who learns the most from that coding exercise. And actually tomorrow, I'll be posting a whole host of organizations that are actively hiring and wanting to take people into the early stages of tech. But Sharena's right. I mean, generationally, if there isn't a video on it on YouTube, then it probably isn't worth doing. So that's sound advice. And what people are wanting to know, because of, you know, they've read your bios, they're looking at you as you speak, is, you know, some advice, practical advice. You know, extraordinary women you all are, but you're also very everyday. I don't know Emma as well as I know the others, but you know, you go about your lives, your work, you're doing incredible things. But people are looking for some practical advice and inspiration around kind of, we're just moving a little from tech into, you know, how do we really move women forward, both in their employment, the skills they attain. What is your advice for young, medium, or women as old as me as they think about 2023 and what's going to be different and better for them? What's your advice? Can be tech, can be not tech. People are interested in all of you. Kick off, one of you.
I'm happy to kick off. So this is, you know, just being a sort of general question. I think it's always about every year setting yourself another goal. I start my year with 4 categories on a vision board of the things that I'm most interested in. And there has to be new, exciting things that I've not tried before. So about 3 years ago, I never ran. You know, I have asthma. I made excuses for any physical exercise. And the first year I set myself a little goal of, why don't we try, you know, a 5K? 5K turned into a 10K. The following year, the 10K turned into a half marathon. And then 2 years later, that turned into a London marathon. And it's about keep pushing that bar and trying new things. And actually, I know we're talking about sports here, but through that, you start to get new energies and new experiences, and you start applying that to your workplace. So yeah, I just think trying new things, setting yourself stretch goals, which you don't want every year to be the same as the year before. You have to keep pushing the bar for yourself. And when you're doing that, you you meet new people through the journey. And yeah, it just pushes you also in your work life as well. So yeah, set yourself some scary targets would be my advice.
I tend to agree.
Oh, sorry. Go on, Ruth. No, go ahead. I was going to say, you know a thing or two about scary targets, don't you?
Yeah, but I also think it's about, you know, it's about being a bit fearless, isn't it? It's about taking a few risks. Some things will work, some things won't work. And I think it's about about having exciting things to look forward to and try. And even if you don't know much about it, but you have a slight interest, well, then go for it, is my view. And I think if you fail, then failure is no bad thing either. You know, we all have failures somewhere along the line. And I think I've probably learned from my biggest failures. And I think, you know, what would I do differently? How can I change? What can I improve, etc. So I'm a little bit like, try it anyway and see if you like it. And if you don't like it, you can always say you've done it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd support what both the ladies have said. I tend to see my career, particularly in 3 to 5 year blocks. That's partly because I have two children, and actually that kind of matches the growing and development stages that they've been, and I've got into that habit. The one thing I do, if I tend to say yes too often, which is, it can be a negative, but it's taken me into the very best, most exciting, most interesting things. And that's when work and interests all blend together in the most wonderful way. So all of a sudden it's not working, it's just doing something that is thoroughly enjoyable. And the final bit of advice that someone said to me, who's very, very, very dear to me, and I should take it forward, but don't always, is only ever believe the nice things that people say about you. Be kind to yourself. You're going to be the very worst critic. And actually if you take the nice things forward, then you will build on it and you will go forward.
That's really
lovely.
nice.
Wonderful, Emma. And I absolutely echo what Emma has just said about looking at your life in 3 to 5 year blocks and be kind to yourself. And I will add to that, Harriet, and I will say very strong, practice is a power of reflection, to what Ruth said, how do you learn from your failures? And, what Sharena said, setting up a goal. But, all that can happen if you reflect. The only magic thing that I have found there is that if you reflect with a coach, it's even better, more incisive, and you work faster. In 2016, I hired a coach for myself when I was on a sabbatical. So, it was paid for by myself. And I think that's the best thing I did for myself, of knowing myself, knowing what my passion is, knowing what I really want to do with my life, having a vision, purpose, to my life. And also, this helps you solve the day-to-day problems with less friction, so you get the long-term ones and you get the short-term ones. And the other is to also develop this attitude that sometimes in life it's okay to be 7 on 10, 7 on 10, as a 7 on 10 as a mother, 7 on 10 as a worker, you're having a tough time at both ends. It's all right in 1 year. You don't always have to make the best bonus and the best incentive every year. So that's, Emma also goes into being kind to yourself sometimes. Because I've worked for 29 years. Not every year is going to be the same. Some years are brilliant and some years are average, and I think we've got to just pass through that.
I've never known you be average, Deepali, but I would add to that, as someone who's run businesses around the world, small, medium, and large, and now spend a lot of time on purpose-driven activities, is how much any one of us can give and get back in volunteering, working in your community. There's a wonderful Hebrew expression. It's called tikkun olam, and it means repair of the world. And any one of us can get enormous inspiration, a positive vibe by, however small. It doesn't have to be at massive scale. It doesn't have to be the UN, but by volunteering, helping your community, putting your hand up and helping others, which is what you have all done in this amazing 45 minutes. I want to thank you so much for giving of your time. We wanted this to be practical advice from inspiring women, and that's exactly what we provided. So we will say, we're going to go quick fire round. Any last comments or inputs from you as we share this, people on the call now, and share it later? Any last comments, any thoughts as we close out, Ruth?
No, other than to say thank you for inviting me. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Always, Ruth. Emma?
No, thank you. Great to spend the time with such an inspirational panel. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Deepali?
I would just say thank you, Harriet. Please keep doing the work that you're doing in the diversity and inclusion space. And to the rest of the women, I would just say, just get on with it.
Sharena?
Thank you again. 2 years running, we've spent International Women's Day together, Harriet. So I'll see you next year, same time.
You bet.
My last bit of advice is mentoring. So sometimes when we're feeling an imposter to ourselves, there's a lot that we've actually achieved so far in our life, and that's even the people that are listening to this, and they've got a lot of knowledge that they can impalm onto the younger females. And by sharing your story, your journey, your successes and failures, it really helps other people. I've been very lucky to be mentored by incredible women the whole of my life, and men, and Harriet being one of them. So just carry on with mentorship, and if you find it hard to make those relationships, drop someone a LinkedIn message, the worst they can do is not respond or say no, on to the next one. But yeah, that's really kind of going to help people with their future and creating those relationships.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sharena. Thank you to you all. And we'll share all of this so that we can amplify. To everyone who's joined us, thank you so much for an inspiring International Women's Day panel, and have wonderful rest of the day or rest in the evening. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.